Good morning, everyone. Nick here from Opportunity Private Capital. And what a treat I have today. I've got one of our longest standing investors, Charles, with us, and he's made it all the way from upcountry to come and visit us in Cape Town. So Charles, you've been buying properties in our developments and investing with us for 13 years. And in that time, I've found you to be one of the most insightful people I know. And we've luckily built a friendship over that period as well. So thank you so much for being here. I'm very excited to be talking to you today.
Thank you so much, Nick. Talking about, the 13-year to where we are today, it's really been quite fantastic. And more so seeing Opportunity Capital really growing and evolving from what it used to be to what it is today. And I'm looking forward to perhaps the next 13 or even 20 years of our relationship, Nick.
Charles, so you once said something to me many years ago that I haven't forgotten, is that you said you invest in time. Do you still abide by that philosophy now?
Most certainly, Nick. It's not necessarily your initial monetary investment that basically earns you returns. It's the period of time. It's the time horizon, So that's how I look at it.
Yeah.
And I think this is just one thing, perhaps, that I think, most of our guys, especially young investors and stuff, one thing that they perhaps could just try to embrace and understand. Because in an investment world, there's things that are happening, disruptions that are happening in between and all of that, right? But if you have actually projected over a period of time, especially if you have a long-term plan that spans, for example, 10 years and beyond, anything else that happens in between becomes a disruption. And if you stick to that plan and that time horizon, right, then you don't end up panicking and then making irrational and emotional, decisions.
Yeah, so that's a good point, because you've actually answered a bit of my second question, which is most people are looking to make a quick buck and they don't really understand this philosophy. And if you could teach it to people, then it'll make investing a whole lot simpler, I think.
Most certainly, Nick. And I think if I may just expand on that, answer, exactly as I said, I think it's firstly the absence of a long-term financial plan.
Yeah.
Right. And secondly, people tend to have a problem of not really taking the pain of building something. And as we all know, building something takes time, takes effort, takes patience. And obviously the results as it is, it's not something that will come overnight. So if we can understand at least those two pillars, have a financial plan, long-term financial plan, have the ability to understand and go through the pain of building, we can then be able to see a difference in terms of our investment outcomes, so to speak.
So it's interesting when one correlates maybe investment knowledge or investment skill maybe to certain professions, etc., etc. It might be a general term, but as an accountant, do you know that accountants are the single biggest profession that invests with us? Why do you think that is?
Quite interesting to hear that, Nick, but not surprising. Basically, accountants are people who have got infinity for numbers. We are just basically that kind of a breed who do even complex investment appraisals, right? And in the process, we're looking at the number of factors. We're looking at the risk, that is involved. We're looking at uncertainty that is involved, right? Now, what it simply means to me, what you just said, if accountants are the biggest group of investors, single group of investors, tells me one thing, that there's something right about the investment package itself, but also there's something right about the investment structure.
So it's funny, we've got generally quite a broad range of investor types. So have you ever thought about what kind of investor type would suit our investments?
Look, Nick, when coming to investment, I think generally investment and risk, there's about three types of investors. You have your risk-averse type of investors. You have your risk-neutral type of investors. You have your risk takers. Those who actually have the strongest appetite for risk. And when you look at what Opportunity Capital offers, it covers almost everybody, so to speak. Reason being, if you look at the extent of security, different layers of security that are actually provided to investors in terms of their funds, that in itself, appeals to different type of investors with their different types of risk appetite. In that sense, your risk averse, type of investor would be basically have an appetite for investment because they would look at things from a risk perspective, right? Your risk neutral guys are basically guys who look at, expected values, their ultimate outcome in terms of their investment, what does it offer in the end?
Yeah, very, very good point. Very good summation, I think. Thank you. Charles, just moving on to another topic, entirely something that we like to talk about is you probably have more political insights than most people that I know, certainly. So let's talk about EWC, expropriation without compensation.
Yeah.
Do you find it something that it's dangerous to the normal property owner, or is it misunderstood?
I think we don't have to panic much. Yes, I understand an element of uncertainty that is there, but let's not panic much. I mean, there will come a point where there's clarity and certainty, then we can move from that point. I think our biggest responsibility, as the citizens, is basically to reconstruct and rebuild our country. That's one thing that actually have to preoccupy our minds. For me, I don't think we'll get to a point where there's going to be a willy-nilly attachment of private property and people being chased away without, I don't think that's how it's going to happen. I don't think there's really a need for any panic at this stage.